So an important thing to keep in mind as you're incorporating inquiry and project-based learning into your classroom is you want to think, okay, what kind of skills do my students need in order to be successful with this inquiry or this project? And that's something that you want to keep in your mind as you're planning, because if your kids don't have certain skills, it'll be a little bit harder for them to be successful at this. And that is something that in both my projects, I try to make sure I keep in mind, like, what skill level are my kids at? And sometimes you might need to do like a little pre-assessment, or maybe you already know from things that you've done previous in your classroom, like, oh, these are some things that I need to be prepared for. So with the civics voting turnout with that project, some things that we did to start off, and I mentioned this a little bit before in another video, I'm going to show you in our other lessons, we had a book that we read about Lillian's right to vote, and I talked about people's right to vote and how that kind of changed over time, and that's when we did You Be the Illustrator, and the kids drew some pictures as I read the picture book to them. We also talked about civic dialogue and what does that mean, and how to kind of be able to share your opinion, and also how to back it up with facts, and making sure that when you how to have a valid argument, and how when we're talking about things, how we listen to each other, and setting up those civic dialogues. That's something that was really important, especially when we're talking in an election year. So those are some things. We also did our first kind of lesson, which when you read in this Read First, it kind of does a great job of going through kind of like how did we set this stuff up. We also did a DBQs with voter turnout, so that they could see what is voter turnout? What does that mean? And looking at trends with voter turnout, not just in the United States and other elections, but also in Salt Lake County, because that's the county that we live in. So very, very excellent. And we actually, with the DBQ, we got them to start thinking about how could I increase voter turnout in my area. So this was a great kind of introduction lessons into the project-based learning to get them in the right framework for what we wanted them to accomplish. Now, with the trial of Joe Hill, what we did there is we had introductory lessons. Sorry, I'm clicking on things here. We had introductory lessons on labor unions and on the progressive era movement in Utah. So this was part of our progressive era unit, and so we had notes and we had things that led up to this. So this wasn't the first time they heard about labor unions or about the progressive era movement. So just so you kind of get a context of that, so the kids had some background information. Also with that, within the assignment itself, I had some background information about Joe Hill, so the students can get a good glimpse about who he was and maybe why was he important, and why would it matter if he committed murder or not, or if he was framed. So again, this was very helpful in establishing our my project-based and inquiry-based learning. So as you're getting started planning out your unit, outlining some things, think about, okay, are there any background skills or something that I need to do with my kids and maybe that first lesson to help them to get ready for future lessons. Cheers.